The next way you can add gels to your photography is by gelling your rim lights. Now, rim lights are going to light the side of your subject. The higher up they are, the more they'll become more like hair lights, and the lower they are, they're just going to outline the sides of the body. Now, the most common modifiers for rim lights are either bare bulb, barn doors, or strip softboxes. And in this setup, I have strip softbox and barn doors. Now, the difference between the two. Strip softbox, again, we're putting the gel inside of that softbox. It's going to give us a more even highlight, a more even illumination, especially for a full-length shot. So you'll see it's very smooth, and it's it has a little bit less contrast and texture, so it'll look a little bit more forgiving on the skin. The barn doors, however, they're a little bit poppier. It's a little bit more of a direct light, and you can narrow the barn doors, open or close them, so that you can have just a sliver of that cover. A couple considerations when you're using rim lights is the position of them in the angle related to your subject. So right now, you'll see, if you look at the photograph I take, that we just have little tiny highlights on the outsides of the subject, which it carves her out and they're very subtle. But what happens if I want to see more of that color? I want it to pop. Well, then we need to change the position of our rim lights. Let me take a quick test. That's perfect, just like that. Okay. So I like this because the rim lights, they're not overpowering the shot, but we are introducing this color. What happens if I want to see a little bit more? So Stephen, can you move those rim lights a little bit closer towards camera? We're going to move it up around the side. And what you're going to see is that those highlights, they actually expand. They actually grow, and you see a little bit more of that color. Okay, good. You can see even with your eye that it's kind of wrapping around her jawline here. Let's try that. Perfect. Great. So the rim lights, they get a little bit broader. And then the further up you bring them, eventually they're not even rim lights anymore. They're a little bit more side lights. So I think that's a pretty good placement there. One thing that you'll notice is that there's no light on the top of her head. The top of her head, the hair kind of blends to black. So what you could do is you could add an additional light, a fourth light above her head, just to give you a little bit of color there. But let's say you don't have a fourth light. Another good solution, can you raise that light up and point it down? A little bit of a higher angle is going to allow that rim light to wrap around just a teeny bit more. In this case, I selected 2 blue gels because I wanted you to be able to compare the difference between the strip softbox and barn doors, but you could do any combination of colors that you choose. All right, let's try that. And can you do the same to the other side for me, Stephen? Great. And keep going, keep going. A little higher. Let's see this. Yeah, so you'll actually see the light wrap around the back of her head. So you can get that. Now, if I was shooting a full-length shot, what that means is I'm probably getting a little bit darker or less light towards the bottom of her body. So I may need to actually add a hair light and keep the rim light where it was. But for a beauty shot like this, I can make a single light dual purpose as multiple by changing the angle. One of the things I like about rim lights, one of the reasons that I use them, is it helps pop the subject out from the background, but it also helps draw attention to beautiful features. So if I'm photographing an athlete, I'll have those rim lights rake around the body for definition. Or if I'm photographing a beautiful model like this, those rim lights are actually picking up a little bit more separation on the jawline and her cheekbones, and I think it's flattering to those features. So before we move on from rim lights, I want to show you a couple simple but fun creative effects. What we're going to do is we're going to take off the modifiers and just use the bare bulbs with gels. What's nice about this, you don't have to own any special modifiers, but can create really beautiful results. We're going to purposefully flare the lights at camera. We're going to actually point them on purpose, and then we're going to create this kind of mist or haze to the atmosphere. So Stephen, can you take off those 2 rim lights and then point them back towards camera? Let's give that a try. Great. If you lower it a little. Yeah. Good. There we go. So typically, you want to avoid lens flare from your rim lights. But in this instance, we're doing it on purpose. So you'll see that where we have the lights placed, they're closer into my frame and pointed back towards camera. So what will happen is it'll actually hit my lens and give me a little bit of flare, and then we're going to play that up even more. So let me take a shot to begin with here. The closer they are, the more they're pointed back at my lens, the more the effect will be. You can even include the lights actually in the shot. All right, so you'll see I'm getting this beautiful haze on either side of the frame. And so it gives a bit of sense of atmosphere. It's a little bit of moodiness. And I like the moodiness and atmosphere. And I want to play it up a little bit more. I want to emphasize it. So I have a couple tools to do so. The first tool that we're going to use is called atmosphere in a can, or haze in a can. And I mean, I feel like it's basically like hairspray. I mean, it's probably something different than that. But what we do is we spray it in the air, and those particles in the air catch the light, and it spreads it out. And so it makes it look like fog or haze, but without having to have a fog or haze machine. Stephen, can you give me a couple sprays in the air back behind her? And so I already have the haze, but it's going to emphasize it even more. Okay, go ahead. And then stop. Let me see. Great. So you'll notice that that haze, it really, when it's backlit, the particles, it picks up the light, kicks it all around, and it gives like a physicality to the light. You can actually see the direction of the light. Haze in a can is great, but there's one more tool that you can try, and it's actually a filter. It's a filter that they use a lot in cinema, and it's called a Black Pro Mist. What a Black Pro Mist does is it takes a light, and around it, it makes it kind of, they call it bloom, it makes it kind of glow a little bit more. So it's how they make those romantic glows around lights in the movies. Now they come in different amounts. I have a fourth, but you can go even stronger than that. And the stronger you go, the more your lights will haze. And so I'm going to just take a shot with it in front of my lens and not in front of my lens. And you'll just see a little bit of the difference. Okay. So you'll see right on the edges, just about, the lights are just about to peek in. What that Black Pro Mist does, the 1/4, is it's grabbing that and giving you little streaks, a little bit more haze. So you can do it actually with haze, or you can intensify the effect with a filter. So to put it all together with rim lights, you can use one rim light or multiple, and you can use any colors that you want, but remember, the further behind the subject that it is, the narrower that highlight's going to be. The more you pull it around to the side, the more you're going to see that color. Modifiers do make a difference. A hard modifier is going to be a little bit more crisp and defined. A soft modifier like a strip softbox is going to be a little bit more even. And if you want a special effect, just use a bare bulb with a gel. Actually point those lights towards camera, and it's going to give you a little bit of a flare effect, which you can play up with a filter, Black Pro Mist filter, or haze in a can.